Natalie's hands, shaking violently, reached for the jagged shards of crystal scattered across the icy white marble floor. The deep crimson flood of expensive liquid pooled around her knees, an obscene stain blooming on her crisp black uniform, mingling with a deeper, visceral red, her own blood seeping from the deep, jagged cut on her palm. The opulent restaurant had descended into a vacuum of silence, heavy and suffocating. Every patron's gaze was fixed on the tableau of wreckage and humiliation. Scarlet Haze stood triumphant, her designer heels tapping impatiently on the blood and wine-soaked floor. Her perfectly manicured hand remained suspended in the air, exactly where the push originated. Her perfect, predatory smile barely concealed the venom in her voice. "That's what happens?" she declared, loud enough to pierce the silence. "When filth like you dares to touch something meant for my table." A crushing weight settled on Natalie's chest. Not now. Not here. She swallowed the hot, metallic taste of shame and panic. This job was the only fragile barrier protecting her daughter's health. Zoe needed the expensive, specialized medication. 2 weeks overdue on the rent already felt like a precipice. She forced her lips open, preparing to utter the groveling apology for a disaster that wasn't hers, when the very atmosphere in the room violently fractured. The massive, dark mahogany entrance doors swung inward, pulled by unseen forces. Every single head swiveled toward the entrance, every hushed conversation dying a sudden, strangled death. 3 imposing figures in flawlessly tailored charcoal suits entered first, moving with the efficient, cold precision of professional security, their eyes sweeping the room like infrared sensors. Then the true gravity entered. Dominic Walsh. His name was currency and fear in equal measure across Manhattan. He owned half the high-end dining establishments in the borough, a ghost known only through his absolute authority, the man senators feared and rival crime families studiously avoided. His entrance was less a walk and more a convergence of ambient energy. Magnetic, terrifying, and utterly absolute. His lethal, dark eyes assessed the chaos with predatory sharpness, absorbing every detail. The crimson mess, the shattered glass, the blood staining the pristine white marble, and Natalie, still kneeling, positioned beneath Scarlet Haze, who postured like a triumphant queen over a vanquished foe. An almost imperceptible muscle twitched in Dominic's strong jaw. He advanced 3 deliberate, measured steps, and the ambient temperature of the room seemed to plummet by 10 degrees. His voice, when it came, was dangerously soft, slicing through the profound silence with the clean precision of honed steel. "What?" he required, his authority undeniable. "Is happening in my restaurant?" Natalie's heart seized in her chest. She knew, with chilling certainty, that the trajectory of her life had just been fundamentally altered. If you want to discover how this story began and what happened after this moment, subscribe to the channel and leave in the comments where you're watching from. Each view helps bring more stories like this one. 3 hours earlier, Natalie had stepped through the service entrance of Bellissimo, clutching the same silent, desperate prayer she offered up every dawn. Please, God, just let today be easy. Let me survive this shift without calamity. Let me bring home enough tips, just enough to cover Zoe's prescription refill. Bellissimo was a fortress of established wealth and aggressive new power. Crystal chandeliers dripped diamonds of light onto white Carrara marble imported directly from Italy. Every table setting featured heavy silver flatware that cost more than her total monthly rental payment in the Bronx. She had endured this environment for 6 grueling months since the closure of the local diner where she used to work. The commute alone was a daily punishment. 3 separate subway lines, an hour and a half each way. But Bellissimo's wages, meager though they felt, were indispensable. "Table 7 needs water," Gerald, her manager, barked, snapping the command at her as she awkwardly tied the strings of her apron. "And smile, Natalie. You look like you're reporting for a funeral." She immediately plastered a strained, unfamiliar expression onto her face, grabbing a heavy water pitcher and heading toward the dining room. The smile felt less like an emotion and more like a heavy, professional mask she had learned to affix. She had mastered the art of being attentive while somehow remaining utterly invisible, anticipating needs before they were voiced, and accepting the way certain customers looked straight through her, as if she were a sheet of glass. Table 7 was already claimed. A young woman was seated alone, aggressively scrolling through her phone, her perfectly sculpted acrylic nails flashing. Cascades of expensive, professionally highlighted blonde hair draped over a silk dress that easily cost 3 times Natalie's quarterly earnings. A designer bag sat like a trophy on the adjacent chair. A diamond tennis bracelet caught and refracted the light. "Good evening," Natalie offered softly, trying to modulate her breathing. "Can I start you with some water?" The woman didn't stir, didn't shift her focus from the screen, didn't even acknowledge the presence of a human being beside her. Natalie waited, counting the seconds internally. 5, 10, 15. "Excuse me, miss. Can't you see I am on my phone?" The woman's voice finally materialized, thick with entitled irritation. "Obviously, I'm not ready to order. Of course, I'll come back. And oh wait, since you're here." The woman, identified on the reservation sheet as Scarlett Hayes, abruptly thrust her phone toward Natalie without ever lifting her eyes. "Take a picture of me. Make sure you get the main chandelier in the background and don't crop my shoes." Natalie's grip instinctively tightened on the water pitcher. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to tell the spoiled, vapid girl that professional photography was not listed on her job description. But Gerald's watchful eye was burning from across the room, and she needed this job more desperately than she needed the fleeting satisfaction of dignity. "Of course," she said quietly, setting down the pitcher and taking the phone. She took 3 rapid photos, attempting various flattering angles. Scarlett snatched the phone back without a single word of thanks, scrolling through the results with a critical eye. "These are terrible. The lighting is completely wrong. Ugh, you made me look fat." Scarlett finally lifted her head, her blue eyes piercing Natalie with chilling disdain. "Don't you know how to operate a camera? What kind of education did you even get?" A flush of helpless shame and heat crawled up the back of Natalie's neck. "I apologize. Would you like me to attempt a few more?" "Forget it. Just bring me the Chateau Margaux. The 2015. Natalie's internal clock stopped. That specific vintage of Bordeaux was listed on the menu for $1,200 per bottle. She nodded and turned toward the wine cellar, her heart beginning a frantic, heavy rhythm against her ribs. She had served expensive bottles before, but nothing nearly this valuable. Her hands had to be steady. They could not slip. The cellar was cool, silent, and dark, an archive of rows upon rows of bottles categorized by region and vintage. She located the Chateau Margaux on the 3rd shelf, cradled it carefully, and returned to the noise of the dining room. Scarlett was now engrossed in a loud phone conversation, laughing sharply about something, her voice carrying easily across the hushed restaurant. Other diners glanced over with thinly veiled annoyance. Natalie approached the table with the extreme caution usually reserved for handling explosives, the expensive bottle cradled securely in both hands. "Miss Hayes, your wine?" Scarlett waved a dismissive hand, still engaged in her loud phone conversation. The movement was so abrupt, so utterly reckless, that her extended palm connected directly with the neck of the bottle. Time seemed to drag, the moment stretching thin and fragile. The priceless glass cylinder was ripped from Natalie's grasp. She lunged forward, fingers closing on nothing but cold air. The crystal bottle struck the sharp edge of the table with a horrifying, sickening crack before detonating against the hard marble floor. $1,200 worth of deeply aged wine instantly hemorrhaged across the white surface, spreading like a pool of fresh, catastrophic blood. The entire restaurant fell into instant, stunned silence. Natalie stared blankly at the wreckage, her mind seized with horror. Asterisk, that's a week's wages. Asterisk, no, 2 weeks. It was more than she could clear in an entire month. "Oh my God!" Scarlett shrieked, scrambling backward. "You clumsy idiot! Look what you did to my dress." She pointed furiously at a minuscule spray of red near the hem. "This is Valentino. Do you have any remote idea how much this costs?" I'm so sorry. You'll what? You'll pay for it?" Scarlett's laugh was brittle and vicious. "With what money?" You probably can't even afford to shop at Target. Gerald materialized, his face a terrifying shade of scarlet. Miss Hayes, I am profoundly sorry. We will absolutely comp your entire meal tonight, and I don't want a free meal, Scarlet spat. I want her fired. Now, I refuse to be served by someone so fundamentally incompetent. Natalie's world physically spun. Asterisk fired. Asterisk Zoe's medicine. The rent. The overdue electricity bill. Please, she whispered, hating the desperate, pleading sound of her own voice. It was an accident. I will pay for the wine. I'll work extra shifts. You'll pay for it? Scarlett's eyes gleamed with triumphant malice. How exactly? By working here for the next 5 years? She redirected her fury toward Gerald. I said, fire her, unless you want me to call the owner and explain the caliber of staff you're employing here. Gerald's face instantly drained from red to corpse white. Miss Hayes, I am certain we can reach an understanding. Fire her now. Natalie dropped to her knees, her hands trembling uncontrollably as she tried to gather the lethal fragments of broken glass. She had to do something. Fix this immediately. If she cleaned the damage fast enough, perhaps Gerald would revoke his threat. The push was unexpected, violent. Scarlett's hand slammed into Natalie's shoulder with enough force to send her sprawling face first onto the slick, wet marble. Her knees cracked painfully against the stone. A large piece of glass sliced deep into her outstretched palm. Pain bloomed sharp, hot, and blinding. That's what happens when trash like you touches my table. The cruel words resonated, echoing in the cathedral of silence. Natalie remained paralyzed on her knees, the blood from her hand steadily dripping onto the floor, mingling irrevocably with the costly wine. She felt the scrutiny of every single eye, felt the suffocating weight of humiliation crush her chest. Then the atmosphere itself snapped taut. The immense entrance doors opened, and Dominic Walsh stepped fully into his restaurant. Natalie remained rigid on her knees, the pain in her palm a dull roar, the pooling blood forgotten as Dominic Walsh's presence engulfed the room like a swiftly gathering, unstoppable storm front. She had never seen the legendary owner, few employees ever had, but there was no room for doubt as to his identity. Even Gerald straightened unconsciously, pure fear flickering across his features. Dominic's lethal, dark eyes swept the scene with predatory precision. The wreckage of the $1,200 bottle, the spilled wine, Natalie's kneeling figure, and Scarlett standing over her with aristocratic, entitled arrogance plastered across her perfect features. I asked a question, Dominic stated quietly. His voice didn't need volume. It was the kind of tone that carried the raw, unassailable authority that could compel hardened men to confess their darkest sins. What is happening in my restaurant? Gerald rushed forward, his words tumbling over themselves. Mr. Walsh, sir, I wasn't expecting you tonight. There was a small incident with the wine service, but I assure you it's under complete control. Does that look under control to you? Dominic's gaze never left Scarlett. There is blood on my floor. It was her fault. Scarlett rushed to explain, her voice losing its edge of bravado. The waitress is utterly incompetent. She dropped a $1,200 bottle. You were just what? Dominic moved forward again, those 3 previous steps echoing in the silence. Pushing my employee while she was actively bleeding and injured? Scarlett's face went immediately pale, the entitlement replaced by dawning fear. I didn't push her. She was in the way. Get up, Dominic commanded. For a confused instant, Natalie thought he meant her, but his intense gaze remained locked on Scarlett. Get out of my restaurant. Excuse me? Scarlett's shock was genuine, profound. Do you know who my father is? I know exactly who your father is. William Hayes, the third-rate real estate developer who has spent 3 years trying to muscle his way into the waterfront projects. Dominic's answering smile was glacial, failing entirely to reach his eyes. He is going to be incredibly disappointed when he discovers those deals are permanently off the table. Not now. Not ever. Scarlett's remaining color vanished entirely. You can't. My father has connections. Your father has connections to people who answer directly to me. Dominic finished, his voice dropping to a dangerous, resonant low. You have 60 seconds to vacate this property before I have you physically removed. Scarlett snatched her designer handbag, her earlier confidence crumbling into panicked motion. This is outrageous. You can't treat me like 45 seconds. She fled toward the exit, her heels clicking frantically against the marble. When the door slammed shut, Dominic finally, fully, turned his focus onto Natalie. You, he stated, and the sudden modulation in his tone was shocking. Softer, perhaps, yet still imbued with absolute command. Stand up. Natalie's legs trembled uncontrollably as she struggled to rise. Blood dripped steadily onto the white floor. She kept her eyes resolutely downcast, afraid to meet his gaze, afraid of finding the same disgust, disappointment, and cold dismissal she saw in nearly everyone else. Look at me. It was not a request. It was an irrevocable order. She slowly lifted her head, finding herself captive beneath the intensity of the darkest eyes she had ever encountered. Not cruel, not exactly cold, but sharp with an emotion she couldn't name. Up close, Dominic Walsh was an exercise in controlled menace. Sharp jawline, dark hair severely combed back, and a faint, thin scar tracing his left temple. He was, she guessed, in his late 30s, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that likely cost more than the price of her broken-down car. "What is your name?" he asked, the intensity unwavering. "Natalie. Natalie Benson." "How long have you endured working here?" "Natalie? 6 months, sir." "Has anyone ever laid hands on you before? In this establishment, or any other?" The sudden shift in subject stunned her. She hesitated, 1,000 small acts of cruelty and dismissal flashing through her mind. Hands that lingered, customers who treated her like furniture, managers who looked away. "No, sir." She lied, her voice barely a breath. His eyes narrowed fractionally. He knew she was lying. "Gerald," Dominic commanded without breaking eye contact with Natalie. "You are fired. You have precisely 1 hour to collect your meager belongings and leave the premises." "Sir, I didn't." She dropped the wine. "You permitted a customer to physically assault my employee in front of a dining room full of witnesses." Dominic cut him off, lethal control in every syllable. "And then you were prepared to terminate the victim to placate her attacker. Did I misrepresent the situation?" Silence. 1 hour, Dominic reiterated. "And you will never again be employed in this city." Gerald stumbled backward, his face a terrifying shade of ash before fleeing toward the back office. Dominic turned back to Natalie, his expression shifting from cold command to focused concern. "Let me see your hand." "It's fine, I just need to." "Let me see it." She extended her bleeding palm reluctantly. He gently, yet firmly, closed his fingers around her wrist, gentle despite their obvious strength. He examined the severe laceration with a devastating intensity that made her heart seize up. "This requires stitches." "Marco," he called out to one of the suited men standing guard. "Bring the car around. We are taking Miss Benson to the hospital." "No." The refusal escaped Natalie before she could process the audacity of arguing with Dominic Walsh. "I mean, thank you, but I cannot. I need to complete my shift. You require medical attention. I need this job." The sheer desperation that laced her voice embarrassed her to the core, but pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Please, sir. I will clean up the mess. I'll pay for the wine. I'll work double shifts, but I absolutely cannot go to the hospital. I have no insurance, and I cannot miss work. My daughter." She clamped her mouth shut, realizing the depth of her disclosure. Dominic's eyes searched her face, penetrating and sharp. "You have a daughter?" Natalie managed a trembling nod, fighting back hot tears. "She's 5. She has severe asthma. The medicine is terribly expensive, and I am already behind on the rent. If I lose this job, I lose everything. Asterisk, please." For a long, silent moment, he did nothing but study her with those impenetrable, dark eyes. Then he gently released her wrist. "You are not losing your job," he stated. "You are being promoted. Effective immediately, you are my personal assistant." I what?" Natalie stammered, utterly bewildered. You will work from my private office. Standard business hours. No more late nights. Health insurance is included. Salary. He cited a number, a figure that caused her head to reel, spinning 3, perhaps 4 times the income she currently earned. I don't understand, she whispered, the blood forgotten. Why would you? I am not qualified to. How many languages do you speak? The abrupt question threw her off balance. 3. English, Spanish, and conversational French. But that has no bearing. How can you manage schedules? Handle sensitive correspondence? Maintain absolute confidentiality? Yes, but then you are qualified. He produced a crisp business card and pressed it into her uninjured hand. Marco will take you to the hospital now. The bill is to be forwarded directly to me. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, at this address. Do not be late. Mr. Walsh, I cannot accept. You can and you will. His tone was now beyond dispute. But then a fleeting shadow, almost like hesitation, crossed his features. Unless, of course, you do not wish to work for me. The vulnerability of the question, as if her preference truly mattered to this empire builder, made her breath hitch. I want to, she said, her voice shaking slightly with the weight of unexpected hope. Thank you. A subtle, almost invisible hint of a smile touched his lips. Good. Now allow Marco to ensure that hand is properly repaired. And Natalie, she looked up at him, tears finally threatening to spill. No one touches you again. Not in my restaurant. Not anywhere. Is that understood? She nodded, incapable of finding her voice. As Marco guided her toward the main exit, Natalie risked a single backward glance. Dominic stood motionless in the center of the shattered chaos, surrounded by broken glass and spreading wine, watching her departure with an expression she still could not decipher. But she knew, deep in her bones, that her life had irrevocably changed. The urgent care visit consumed 3 long hours. 7 stitches required to close the gash on her palm, a course of antibiotics, and a tetanus shot. Medical necessities she had long deferred because she couldn't afford them. True to his word, Dominic had contacted the facility ahead of time. The staff treated her with an astonishing degree of respect, as if she were a person of genuine consequence. The bill never materialized. Marco drove her back to the Bronx in a black, imposing SUV that felt more like a highly armored tank, its immaculate leather interior and deeply tinted windows rendering the surrounding streets into a different, distant world. He was silent but efficient, waiting outside until she was safely inside her cramped, 1-bedroom apartment, then handing her a clean, anonymous card with a single phone number. Any problems, you call, was his only instruction. Inside, her mother was asleep on the worn pull-out couch. Zoe was curled up in Natalie's twin bed, her small chest rising and falling with that slight, high-pitched wheeze that never failed to tighten Natalie's heart. She sat on the edge of the mattress, gently stroking her daughter's dark curls, struggling to rationalize the whirlwind of events. The profound humiliation, the dramatic rescue, the job offer that felt impossibly good, criminally suspicious. Why would a man like Dominic Walsh extend a lifeline to her? Men of his stature didn't register women like waitresses. They certainly didn't hand out life-altering opportunities to strangers they had just plucked off a marble floor, unless they expected a steep, calculated return. The thought of a trap, of a predatory arrangement, sent a spike of ice through her veins. She knew the stories of powerful men and the specific, beautiful, disposable women they kept. High maintenance, sophisticated women who eventually aged out or asked too many uncomfortable questions. Yet, the expression in his eyes hadn't been predatory. It had been something protective, almost fiercely territorial. Asterisk, no one touches you again. Asterisk, she touched the thick bandage on her palm, recalling the unexpected gentleness of his large hands as he'd assessed the injury, and the barely contained rage when she mentioned Zoe. Perhaps she was being terribly naive. But Zoe desperately required that medicine. They needed stability. And for the first time in 5 years of unrelenting struggle, someone had offered a viable exit ramp from the endless, suffocating cycle of poverty. She had no choice. She would accept the risk. The following morning, Natalie stood rigid outside the address printed on Dominic's card, her heart performing a rapid, terrified drumbeat. The building dominated the midtown skyline, a monolith of glass and polished steel, guarded by a doorman who greeted her with unexpected deference. "Miss Benson," he stated warmly. "Top floor. Mr. Walsh is expecting you." The private elevator ascent felt interminable, a final boundary between her old life and the unknown. She was wearing her best attempt at professionalism, a simple navy dress salvaged from a thrift store and modest heels that currently pinched her feet. Her bandaged hand throbbed rhythmically. The elevator doors parted directly into a penthouse office suite that instantly stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a stunning panorama of Manhattan, the morning sun turning the entire city into burnished gold. Modernist furniture mingled with museum-quality art. Everything whispered wealth and untouchable power. Dominic was standing near the expansive windows, deeply absorbed in a phone call conducted in rapid, fluid Italian. He appeared slightly different in the clear daylight, still intensely dangerous and powerful, but perhaps younger, the sharp edges softened slightly by the morning light. He concluded the call the instant he noticed her, his dark eyes instantly tracking her movement. "Natalie, you came. You thought I wouldn't? I thought perhaps you might have decided I was slightly crazy." A faint hint of amusement touched his mouth. "Or dangerous. Am I both?" "Probably." His slight smile widened fractionally. "How is your hand?" "Better. Thank you for everything. The hospital, don't thank me. It is what should have been done." He gestured toward a sleek, smaller office adjacent to his own massive desk. "That is your space. Computer, phone, everything you will require. Rosa will be in this afternoon to initiate you into the internal systems." Natalie moved toward the space. A sleek desk, an ergonomic chair, a window view far surpassing any apartment she'd ever imagined owning. "Mr. Walsh, I have to ask this. Why me? You could hire literally anyone. Someone with appropriate experience and credentials. You speak 3 languages. You maintained professional composure under extreme stress. You consistently prioritize your daughter, even when it costs you personally." He leaned back against his imposing desk, arms crossed over his chest. "That is worth significantly more than any MBA. But you don't know me. I had you thoroughly investigated last night." She froze instantly. "What? I know you are 26, a single mother. Your daughter's father vanished before she was born. You have never been arrested. You were never late on a single bill until this year, when Zoe's asthma intensified. Work 60 hours a week, covering double shifts at the diner, and still ensure your mother's rent is paid. You've had legitimate grounds to pursue a lawsuit against employers at least 3 times. Yet you swallowed your pride and stayed silent to keep working." His dark eyes held hers, unwavering and absolute. "I know exactly who you are, Natalie. Every difficult choice, every silent sacrifice. That's precisely why you are here." She should have been furious at the staggering violation of her privacy. She ought to have been paralyzed by fear. Instead, a profound calm settled over her. For the first time in years, someone had not only looked at the surface of her life but had seen the relentless, exhausting effort sustaining it instead of just cataloging the poverty. "I won't let you down," she affirmed, the promise quiet but firm. "I know," he responded, pushing off the mahogany desk where he had been leaning. "But there's something else you need to understand, and this is crucial. This position, it's not just about scheduling meetings and organizing emails. I have enemies, Natalie. Serious ones, the kind who operate without conscience. People who might try to use anyone close to me, even a new assistant, as leverage. Working for me means accepting a level of security you're probably not used to, perhaps one you find excessive. Security teams, armored drivers, armed guards when necessary, strict protocols for every movement." His expression hardened, turning utterly grave. "I am not trying to intimidate you, but you need to know exactly the world you are walking into. The risks are real." "Is Zoe in danger?" The question emerged sharper and louder than she intended, edged with a sudden primal panic, but she didn't apologize for it. Her daughter's absolute safety transcended any professional concern. "No," Dominic said immediately, his tone shifting instantly from stern employer to protective force. "She will be safer than she has ever been. I will personally guarantee it." Something minute but intense flickered across his face, an emotion too swift and vulnerable to define. A pure, protective rage. Children should be protected. Always. There was a devastating story hidden in that declaration, buried deep beneath his carefully controlled veneer. A profound wound that had clearly never fully closed. "Okay," Natalie conceded, her decision settled. "Then I'm in. Whatever protocols you need, whatever security arrangements, I will follow them without question." "Good." He glanced at his heavy steel watch. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes that can't wait. Rosa will be here in an hour to begin your training. For now, just settle in and familiarize yourself with the systems." And Natalie, she looked up from the sleek cherry desk where she'd been placing her worn leather purse. "Welcome to the family." The word family lingered in the air between them, heavy and loaded with an ambiguous meaning she couldn't quite decipher. It felt like both a blessing and a solemn oath. The first week passed in a disorienting blur of information and intensity. Rosa, a formidable, sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who had served Dominic for 15 years, trained Natalie with surgical patience and efficiency. The workload was relentlessly demanding, but structurally manageable. Scheduling intricate international calls, drafting delicate correspondence, translating complex documents, and conducting high-level research. Dominic's business empire was vast and complicated. It spanned legitimate ventures, a growing chain of boutique hotels and high-end real estate, and bled into darker territories Rosa merely referred to as logistics or overseas investment. Realms Natalie instinctively understood involved risk, contraband, and things best left unasked. She learned quickly that Dominic was exacting in his standards, expecting nothing less than excellence, yet he was fundamentally fair. He never berated her when she inevitably made a mistake. Instead, he corrected her errors with the same calm, analytical focus he applied to everything else. What most surprised her, however, was his persistent curiosity about Zoe. It wasn't intrusive or inappropriate, but genuinely solicitous. What did the little girl enjoy doing? How was she adjusting to kindergarten? Was the new medicine proving effective? On Friday afternoon, a delivery arrived at her cramped, fourth-floor apartment. It was a brand-new, top-of-the-line nebulizer, the type of sophisticated equipment insurance companies invariably denied coverage for. The attached card was starkly simple. No child should struggle to breathe. D.W. Natalie wept in her tiny bathroom for 10 minutes, overcome by a depth of unsolicited kindness she didn't know how to process, let alone accept. Monday morning, she marched into his expansive, sunlit office, fueled by determined indignation. "Mr. Walsh, I need to arrange to pay you back for the— No, it's simply too generous. I can't possibly just accept something that valuable." He looked up from his computer, his expression utterly patient, allowing her to finish her agitated protest. "Do you know how much capital I earned while you were standing here arguing about a piece of medical equipment? More than that nebulizer cost, easily. Let go." "But it's not fair to you." "What is not fair?" Natalie is a 5-year-old child struggling for air because her mother is too proud to accept help when it is freely offered. His tone was not harsh, but delivered with such unwavering authority that it silenced her completely. "You work for me now. Your well-being, and by extension Zoe's well-being, are now within my sphere of responsibility. End of discussion." She stared at him, a tempest of emotions tangling in her chest. Deep gratitude, confusion, and a burgeoning warmth she was afraid to fully acknowledge. "Why do you care?" she asked quietly, the genuine curiosity overriding caution. For a long, heavy moment, he offered no answer, just gazing past her. "Because no one cared when I was the kid who couldn't breathe. When I was the one who desperately needed help and received nothing but closed doors and dismissive silence." His eyes met hers, and she saw something profoundly raw there, something authentic and devastating. "I cannot change my past, but I can certainly change someone else's present." The unexpected vulnerability in his admission shook her to the core. This wasn't the image of the ruthless, calculating figure everyone feared. This was a man carrying wounds that had never fully healed, barely concealed beneath the tailored suit. "Thank you," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. "You're welcome." He cleared his throat, the brief, intense moment of openness closing instantly, replaced by professional reserve. "Now about tonight's dinner meeting." He indicated the documentation spread across his desk. "Tonight, the Castiano family, a Chicago outfit, is flying in for crucial negotiations. I need you there to translate some of the complex financial and territorial documentation. It will undoubtedly run late. I will have an armored car take you home afterward and compensate you handsomely for the overtime." Natalie hesitated, biting her lip. "I'll need to quickly arrange care for Zoe. My mother usually brings her." "Bring Zoe here." She blinked, momentarily stunned. "What? Bring Zoe here to the tower. There's a spacious spare office 3 floors up with a comfortable couch and media setup. Rose's daughter, Emily, can watch her. She's a college student, needs the extra money, completely trustworthy. Zoe can do homework, watch her movies, whatever. Then you all ride home together in the secured car." It was too much. Too generous, too thoughtful, too perfect for the messy reality of her life. "Why are you doing all this?" The question burst out, fueled by persistent disbelief. "The job, the expensive medicine, the meticulous care for my daughter's welfare. I don't understand what you want from me in return." Dominic rose slowly, deliberately. He walked around the colossal desk until he was close enough that she could clearly see the tiny gold flecks suspended in the dark abyss of his eyes. "I want you to stop struggling," he said quietly, his voice a low vibration. "I want you to sleep soundly at night without worrying how you'll pay next month's rent. I want your daughter to have everything she needs for a healthy life. I want you to work for me because you choose to, because you feel valued, not because you are desperate and have no other options." He paused, the space between them humming with unspoken energy. "And maybe, just maybe, eventually I want you to look at me and not see a monster." Her breath hitched in her throat. "I don't see a monster. You will. Eventually, you'll hear things, learn things about my business and my history, and you'll realize exactly what kind of man I truly am." "I already know what kind of man you are," she countered, surprising even herself with the surge of boldness. "You're the kind of man who fires incompetent managers for letting customers abuse their low-wage staff, who makes sure vulnerable little girls can breathe without struggling, who treats a struggling waitress like she matters." Something profoundly shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or something far deeper and more unsettling. "Natalie." The intense moment shattered abruptly as his phone rang, its sound jarringly loud. He answered it instantly, speaking rapid, authoritative Italian, and just like that, the vulnerability was sealed away, replaced by cold command. But Natalie had seen it, had caught a glimpse beneath the heavy armor to the man underneath, and God help her, she was dangerously starting to care about both versions. The crucial Castiano dinner was held that evening in a pristine private room at one of Dominic's quieter, less flashy restaurants in Soho. Not the flagship Bissimo, but a discreet location where the windows were heavily tinted and the security was invisible but intensely omnipresent. Natalie arrived dressed in a professional black sheath dress Rosa had helped her select. It was elegant and understated, her hair secured in a neat, severe bun. Zoe was safely installed in the spare office 3 floors up, happily engrossed in coloring with Rose's daughter, Emily, who had thoughtfully brought an entire bag of art supplies and snacks. Remember, Dominic had instructed her just before they entered the private dining room. Translate exactly what they say. Do not soften it. Do not editorialize or shade the meaning. I need the raw truth, Natalie, even if it is ugly and offensive. I understand. And Natalie, he touched her elbow, a brief, anchoring pressure. If anything makes you uncomfortable, anything at all, you leave the table instantly. No questions asked. You call Rosa and you go to Zoe. Now, 2 hours into the dinner, she understood exactly why he had issued that urgent warning. The Castianos were superficially charming. Antonio, the aging patriarch, told loud, boisterous jokes, and complimented the impeccable food. His son Marco was younger, undeniably handsome, radiating an air of easy, practiced smiles. But underneath the smooth pleasantries ran dangerous currents of naked threat and ruthless calculation. They were negotiating the division of specific territory, critical shipping routes through the ports, the ownership of complex distribution networks, and massive spheres of influence. The conversation danced fluidly between sharp English and rapid Italian, and Natalie translated financial documents with steady hands, despite the cold, tight knot forming in her stomach. "Your assistant is quite beautiful," Antonio remarked in Italian, fixing a predatory smile on Natalie, viewing her like a delicate dessert. "Where did you find her?" "She is not part of this discussion," Dominic countered flatly, reverting instantly to English. His voice was devoid of inflection. Antonio switched smoothly back to English with a knowing, proprietary smile. "Of course, forgive an old man's appreciation of beauty." He turned to his son. "Marco, what do you think of the Walsh proposal?" Marco's smile was chilling, failing to reach the cold calculation in his eyes. "I think Dominic is being generous. Almost too generous. It makes me wonder what he's not telling us about the risks involved." "Everything is meticulously detailed in the documents," Dominic stated. "Natalie, please provide the distribution breakdown for Marco." She pulled out the relevant pages, carefully passing copies across the glossy table. As she leaned forward, Marco's hand deliberately brushed her hip, lingering for a fraction of a second too long. She froze completely. Dominic's face went utterly, terrifyingly cold, his eyes turning to chips of blue ice. "Marco," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "move your hand." Move your hand." The temperature in the private room plummeted several degrees. Marco withdrew his hand with startling speed, but the lingering smirk suggested he had successfully gotten the precise reaction he wanted from Dominic. "Dominic, please." Antonio laughed nervously, clearly trying to diffuse the lethal tension. "My son meant no disrespect. He's young. He forgets his manners sometimes." "He forgets a lot of things," Dominic replied, his gaze never leaving Marco's face. "Like the fact that I could easily end his entire bloodline with a single phone call right now." The silence that followed was deafening, suffocating. "Gentlemen," Natalie intervened, her voice miraculously steady despite her violently racing heart. "Perhaps we should take a brief break, refresh our drinks, and review the numbers separately." It fractured the tension just enough. Antonio agreed quickly, wiping sweat from his brow, and Marco excused himself to the restroom, his handsome face flushed with embarrassed, furious anger. The instant they were alone, Dominic turned to her, his jaw rigid. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. It wasn't nothing." His jaw remained painfully tight. "I should never have brought you into this atmosphere. This is my world. Your world where you need someone you can absolutely trust," she countered, meeting his fierce gaze. "That's why I'm here, Dominic, to help you navigate this. So, let me." He studied her face, and she witnessed the internal war playing out behind his eyes. The protective, overwhelming desire to shelter her instantly versus the pressing, absolute need for her intelligence and assistance. The fear of dragging her deeper into the violence versus the growing certainty that he desperately needed her anchored by his side. "If anyone ever touches you again, I will tell you," she promised, fiercely independent. "But Dominic, you cannot threaten to kill everyone who merely looks at me wrong. Watch me." The intensity in his voice sent a sudden wave of heat through her chest. This was no longer just about standard employee protection. This was something else entirely, something possessive and profound that neither of them was remotely ready to name. The door clicked open. Marco returned, his father trailing closely behind him, both men wearing expressions of carefully crafted neutrality. "Shall we continue?" Antonio suggested, his voice slightly strained. The rest of the dinner passed without further incident, but Natalie felt the fundamental shift. The way Dominic subtly repositioned his heavy chair, always placing himself between her and the Castellanos. The casual, proprietary way his hand occasionally brushed her lower back when guiding her to different documents or seats. Possessive, protective, the calculating, intense interest with which Marco watched both of them. It was long past midnight when the armored car finally pulled up to Natalie's modest building. Zoe was soundly asleep in her arms, utterly exhausted from her evening of coloring, snacks, and movies. Dominic had unexpectedly insisted on riding with them. Despite having his own secure car waiting back in Soho, "You didn't have to come," Natalie murmured as the driver opened her door. "Yes, I did." He carefully carried Zoe up the 3 steep flights of stairs while Natalie unlocked the doors, moving through her cramped, familiar apartment with a heightened, careful awareness of how small and precarious her world must seem to a man like him. Yet, he didn't look uncomfortable or judgmental. He just laid Zoe gently on the twin bed, pulling the blanket over her small form with surprising tenderness. In the dim, shadowed light of the living room, Natalie instinctively went to the kitchen, making a pot of coffee she knew neither of them would actually drink. "Thank you," she said again, "for tonight, for everything." Dominic stood by her small window, looking out over the quiet, darkened Bronx streets below. "I put you in danger tonight. I apologize for that." "No, you didn't. Marco Castellano is not a good man. None of them are, and now they know you exist. No, they know you matter to me." The admission hung between them, thick and resonant. "Do I?" she asked quietly, her heart pounding against her ribs. "Matter to you?" He turned from the window, and the raw look in his eyes instantly stole her breath away. "You shouldn't. This was supposed to be simple, transactional. I give you a job. You'd be safe and well paid. Everyone wins. But then you showed up and you were you. Smart and strong and utterly refusing to let life break you. Loving your daughter so fiercely. Looking at me like I'm a human being instead of some convenient monster. Dominic, I'm not a good man, Natalie. The terrible things I've done, the things I will inevitably have to do in this life. You don't want to be anywhere close to that darkness." She took a step toward him, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm. "Then why do I feel safer here with you than I have felt in years? Because you don't know everything yet. So tell me, show me. Let me decide for myself what I'm willing to accept." For a long, paralyzing moment, he simply stared at her, absorbing her certainty. Then, his hand slowly came up, cupping her face with a shocking gentleness that seemed impossible from a man so inherently dangerous. "I grew up in Sicily," he said quietly, his gaze distant. "My father was a fisherman. Honest, hardworking, kind. The local mafia demanded protection money, the peso. When he couldn't pay, they burned down our boat, everything we had. Then they came to the house." His thumb brushed softly across her cheekbone. "I was 10 years old. I watched them kill my father. Watched them hurt my mother. Watched my little sister." His voice broke, thick with decades of suppressed agony. Lucia was 8. Asthmatic just like Zoe. After that night, the trauma and the fear made it worse. She'd have an attack. She couldn't breathe. We had absolutely no money left for medicine, for a simple inhaler. I tried everything, stealing food, begging on the docks. Nothing worked. His eyes were dark with ancient, profound grief. She died in my arms because I couldn't save her, because I was small, weak, and utterly powerless. "Dominic," Natalie whispered, tears silently streaming down her face for the boy he had been. "I swore that night I'd never be powerless again. Never watch another child struggle to breathe while I stood helpless. Never let anyone hurt someone I—" He stopped himself abruptly, unable to finish the thought. "That's who I am, Natalie. That's why I do what I do. Why I can't walk away from this life, even when I know I should." She understood now. The nebulizer, his meticulous care for Zoe, the protective fury that erupted at the dinner table. "You're not that scared boy anymore," she said gently. "No, I'm much worse. I'm the monster the other monsters fear. You're a man who protects people who can't protect themselves. A man who sees inherent value in a waitress everyone else looked straight through. A man who carried my sleeping daughter up 3 flights of stairs like she was the most precious thing in the world." She pressed her hand over his heart, feeling the powerful, erratic beat beneath his expensive shirt. That's who you are, Dominic. Natalie, you can't. We can't allow this to happen. Why? Because I will destroy you. Everyone close to me ends up hurt. It's an unavoidable guarantee of this life. Or maybe, she countered, everyone close to you ends up protected by the most powerful, fiercely loyal man in the city. He laughed, a fractured, broken sound. You have far too much faith in me, and you have far too little faith in yourself. The distance between them was negligible, electric. His hand remained cupping her face. Hers was pressed firmly against his heart. She could feel his pulse racing, mirroring her own. If I kiss you, he said quietly, his voice a rasp, everything changes forever. You won't just be my assistant. You'll be mine in a way I cannot control. And I won't be able to let you go. Maybe I don't want you to let me go. His eyes searched hers, desperate for any flicker of doubt or trace of fear, finding only a determined certainty. When he finally kissed her, it was nothing like she had braced herself for. Not forceful or demanding, but gentle, almost reverent, as if she were a fragile, precious thing he was afraid to break. She kissed him back instantly, pouring everything into it. All the relief, the growing feelings, the deep, undeniable trust. When they finally pulled apart, his forehead rested heavily against hers. This is a mistake, he whispered, his breath hot against her skin. Probably. I'm going to fall irrevocably in love with you, Natalie. I'm already halfway there with you. He smiled then, a real, unguarded smile that transformed his ruthless face. God help us both. A phone shattered the intimate moment, his secure line buzzing violently on the nearby table. He pulled it out, read the message that flashed across the screen, and his entire demeanor shifted back, instantly glacial. I have to go. There's a developing situation. He stopped at the apartment door, turning back to look at her. Lock the door behind me. Triple check it. I'm sending Marco, my security detail, not the Castiano, to watch your building tonight. Dominic, what's wrong? Antonio Castiano left the restaurant 20 minutes ago. His son, Marco, did not. His eyes were hard, murderous. Someone sent him a very deliberate message. Someone close to us, potentially. I need to find out who the hell is responsible. Fear clutched her heart, cold and paralyzing. Be careful. Always. He kissed her once more. Quick, fierce, and absolute. I'll call you in the morning. Then he was gone, and Natalie was left alone in her quiet apartment with her sleeping daughter and the vivid, alarming taste of danger still lingering on her lips. She locked the door, triple-checked it, and wondered what bottomless pit she had just willingly stepped into. The call came at 4 a.m. Natalie was half asleep on the living room couch, completely unable to truly rest after Dominic left. The phone lit up the dark room. DW Mobile. Hello? I need you to listen very carefully. His voice was controlled, surgically calm, but she heard the brittle, lethal edge underneath. Do not panic, Natalie. Everything is going to be fine, but I need you and Zoe to pack an essential bag and be ready when Marco arrives in exactly 15 minutes. Ice flooded her veins, chasing away the sleep. What happened? Marco Castellano is dead. Someone killed him outside the restaurant, making it look deliberately like my doing. His father is now convinced I broke the peace treaty. He has sworn a full-scale vendetta. A heavy pause. You were at that dinner. You are a target now. Natalie's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a desperate gasp. Oh my God. Hey, listen to me now. Nothing is going to happen to you or Zoe. I am moving you immediately to a secure location until I can sort this bloody mess out. You'll be safe there, I promise. Dominic, maybe we should just... I can take Zoe and go somewhere else. Disappear completely. No. The word was absolute, final. You disappear, and I have absolutely no way to protect you. You stay where I can see you, where my people can guard you around the clock. Trust me, please. She closed her eyes, picturing Zoe sleeping peacefully in the next room, oblivious to the encroaching violence. Okay. 15 minutes, Natalie. His voice softened infinitesimally. I'm so sorry. I'm profoundly sorry I brought this to your door. Just don't get yourself killed fixing it. Never. I have far too much to live for now. The line went dead. Natalie moved on pure autopilot, shoving clothes into a duffel bag, gathering Zoe's medicine, her school things, the precious coloring books. She woke her daughter gently. Baby, we're going on a grand adventure now. Zoe rubbed her eyes sleepily. It's still dark, Mommy. I know. Sweetheart. But Mommy's friend needs our help with something urgent. Can you be very brave for me, just for a little while? Zoe nodded sleepily, and Natalie's heart broke slightly. Her daughter had learned too young to be brave, to roll with sudden, drastic changes. Marco, not Castellano, but the head of Dominic's personal security team, arrived exactly on time, accompanied by 3 more silent, imposing guards. They moved Natalie and Zoe downstairs and into an armored SUV with practiced, disturbing efficiency. The safe house was located deep in New Jersey, a sprawling, heavily fortified estate hidden behind tall iron gates and thick walls. Inside, it was stunningly beautiful. All modern comfort, expensive furnishings, and flawless design. Rosa was already there, ready to help settle them in, looking utterly professional despite the early hour. Mr. Walsh called ahead. Rosa said warmly, "Everything you need is already here. There's a playroom stocked for Zoe, a full kitchen, and a security detail that would make Fort Knox jealous." "How long will we be here?" Natalie asked, her voice sounding hollow. "As long as it takes." 3 days passed in a strange, isolated limbo. Natalie tried desperately to maintain normalcy for Zoe. Coloring, games, movies. But her mind was constantly focused on Dominic. He called twice a day without fail, brief conversations designed only to check on their physical safety. Each time, she heard the exhausting toll the crisis was taking on him. "How bad is it? Really?" she asked on the 3rd night. "Manageable. I'm negotiating with the other families, using the data you helped organize to prove I didn't kill Marco. But Antonio wants blood, and some of the others see this as a perfect opportunity to weaken me permanently. Let me help. I can translate, coordinate from here. No. You are the one thing in this entire mess that I know is absolutely safe. Let me keep it that way. Dominic, Natalie. Please, let me protect you." She understood what he wasn't saying. It's all I couldn't do for Lucia. "Okay," she whispered, defeated. "But you have to promise me something crucial. Anything. Come back in one piece. Come back to me." A long, silent pause stretched across the secure line. "I will. I swear it." Day 5. Everything changed instantly. Natalie was in the vast kitchen making lunch when the alarm started. Not a siren, just a quiet, insistent beeping that made Rosa's experienced face instantly go white. "Take Zoe," Rosa ordered urgently, her voice clipped. "The panic room. Now." "What's happening?" "Breach at the south gate. Go." Natalie snatched Zoe up and ran. The panic room was cleverly concealed behind a solid oak bookcase in the library, steel reinforced and stocked with emergency supplies. As the heavy steel door sealed shut behind them with a muffled thud, she heard the distinct, unmistakable sound of gunfire outside. Zoe started to cry instantly, terrified. Natalie pulled her close, fiercely covering her daughter's ears, her own heart hammering so hard she thought it might shatter through her ribs. This was it. This was the violent danger Dominic had warned her about. The ultimate, crushing cost of being close to him. The gunfire continued, sporadic and loud. Voices shouted in Italian, then more shots, then an endless, terrifying silence. Natalie held her breath, held her daughter, and prayed to a God she was no longer sure even listened. The intercom in the panic room crackled violently. "Natalie," Dominic's voice, raw and rough, ripped through the silent panic gripping her. "It's me. You're safe. Open the door." She froze, Zoe clutched tightly against her chest. A chilling uncertainty made her hesitate. The paranoia was relentless. Could be a trick. A low, desperate exhale came from the other side of the heavy door. Could be. "Natalie, please. It's me. Promise." Zoe's favorite color is purple. Her stuffed elephant is named Mr. Trunks. "You take your coffee with too much cream and not enough sugar, always have. It's me." The specificity of the details, the ragged sincerity in his tone, finally broke through her terror. Her shaking hands fumbled with the complex locking mechanism. The steel door swung inward. Dominic stood framed in the library doorway. His jacket was gone, his pristine white shirt was ripped open at the shoulder, stained crimson, but he was undeniably whole. Alive. The sheer physical presence of him, battered yet standing, sent a wave of agonizing relief through her. Natalie launched herself across the threshold. Zoe still nestled securely in her arms. He caught them both instantly, folding them into the ironclad protection of his embrace, his arms tight and fierce around her back. "You're okay?" he breathed, burying his face in her hair, his body trembling slightly beneath her touch. "Thank God you're okay. What happened?" "Castiano's men found the location. I got word 10 minutes before they arrived. I came here with everyone I could absolutely trust." His jaw clenched, revealing the hard, lethal lines of the man who commanded armies. "They're gone now. Won't be a problem again." The deliberate finality with which he pronounced the word "gone" made the meaning starkly, horribly clear. The threat had been utterly and irrevocably removed. "Is it over?" she whispered against his chest, her voice muffled by the expensive fabric of his shredded shirt. "Not yet, but close. I found definitive proof that Marco was killed by his own men. It was a vicious play for power within their family, orchestrated by those closest to him. Antonio will see it. He has to see it. We'll finally have peace." He pulled back just enough to capture her face in his hands. His thumbs gently swept away the stray tears mixed with soot on her cheeks. "But I need to go finish this. End it tonight." "No." A primal fear seized her heart, colder than the library marble. "Stay here. Let someone else handle it." "I can't. If I don't handle this myself, if I show any sign of hesitation or reliance on others, they'll see weakness. More will come after us. After you." His gaze was desperate, pleading for her understanding. "I have to end this, Natalie, so you can be free." "I don't care about being free if you're dead." She choked out, the words laced with pain. "Natalie, I love you." The words burst out, raw, startling, stripped bare of all the layers of control he always wore. "I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But I love you, and the thought of losing you, I just can't bear it." His own eyes went wide, reflecting the intensity of his confession, then softened with an emotion she recognized as pure, staggering wonder. "Say that again. I love you." He crushed his mouth to hers with an intensity that made the entire world outside the library walls disappear, leaving only the fierce, desperate connection between them. It was a promise, a prayer, and a commitment all rolled into one seismic kiss. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested heavily against hers, their breath mingling. "I love you too. Too much. Terrifies me. That's why I have to go. To keep you safe. To give us a chance at a real future. One without the shadow hanging over us." "Then come back," she demanded, gripping the torn fabric of his shirt. "Promise me you'll come back." "I promise nothing in this world will keep me from coming back to you." He kissed Zoe's sleeping forehead gently, brushing the fine baby hairs. "Take care of your mom, little one." Then he was gone, dissolving into the dawn, and Natalie was left in the suddenly silent room, nothing but corrosive fear and fragile hope warring bitterly in her chest. The next 8 hours were the longest, most brutal stretch of her life. Rosa, the housekeeper, moved silently, trying to distract her with tea and soft chatter, but Natalie couldn't focus on anything beyond the ticking clock. She paced the length of the library, she prayed, a habit she'd forgotten she had, and held Zoe so close her small body seemed to fuse with her own. At 2 a.m., hours passed when she thought she could endure another second. Headlights swept dramatically through the tall windows. Rosa checked the security monitor, and a slow, beautiful smile spread across her face. "Tim, dear." Natalie was already halfway across the foyer before the door mechanism had fully released. Dominic stepped through the entrance. He looked utterly ravaged, deeply exhausted, smeared with grime and exhaustion, but miraculously, physically unharmed. When his eyes locked onto hers across the marble floor, his entire face transformed. All the stony hardness of the warlord melted instantly into profound relief and unconditional love. She ran to him. He met her, catching her easily, lifting her straight off her feet. He spun slightly, then buried his face in the sensitive skin of her neck, clinging to her. "It's done," he whispered, the sound husky and spent. "All of it." Antonio saw the proof. "We have peace. You're safe. You came back. I'll always come back to you." They stood suspended in the embrace, a tableau of relief and exhaustion. As the eastern sky began to pale, painting the world in nascent shades of soft gold and delicate pink. Later that morning, with Zoe sleeping deeply and Rosa having tactfully vanished to give them privacy, they sat on the grand, sun-drenched balcony overlooking the waking city. "What happens now?" Natalie asked, leaning her head against his shoulder. The question was heavy with consequence. "Now you choose," he answered, his voice steady. "You can go back to your life. I'll set you up. Money, a beautiful apartment, whatever you need to start over, free and clear." He took her hand, his thumb tracing the knuckles. "Or," his grip tightened slightly, "you can stay. Build a life with me. Let me love you and Zoe. Let me give you everything." "That's not a fair choice." A slight, questioning frown touched his lips. "Why?" "Because I already know what I want." She turned, her smile pure and certain. "I want you. All of you. The danger, the protection, the love. I want this crazy, impossible life, if it means being with you. Even knowing what I am, what I do. You're a man who would burn down the world to protect the people you love." She countered fiercely. "You're a man who sees value where others see nothing but a mess. You're a man who came back when he promised he would." She kissed him softly, sealing her statement. "You're my man." His rare, brilliant smile of pure, unguarded joy broke across his face. He reached into his pocket. "Marry me." She blinked rapidly, startled. "What? Marry me?" "Not today. Not tomorrow. Whenever you're ready. But marry me. Let me make you mine officially in the eyes of the world. Let me be Zoe's father. Let's build a real family, Natalie." "That's insane," she whispered, laughing, the sound catching on a sudden wave of tears. "We've known each other for 2 weeks. I knew in 2 minutes. The moment you looked up at me from that restaurant floor with blood on your hands and fire in your eyes. I knew." He pulled her close, the movement possessive yet tender. "But I'll wait. Days, months, years, however long you need to be sure. Just say you'll think about it." Natalie laughed again, the tension finally snapping, hot tears streaming down her face. "I don't need to think about it. Yes, I'll marry you." He kissed her, a deep, celebratory kiss that felt less desperate than the night before, and more like a foundation being set. The sun rose fully, bathing the balcony in light, washing away the shadows of the past and promising new beginnings. 2 years later, Natalie stood in the sprawling master bedroom of their penthouse, their home, watching the vast, complicated city wake up below her. Behind her, she heard Zoe's clear, bubbling laughter mixed with Dominic's deeper, reassuring voice. They were making breakfast, a sacred Sunday morning tradition. The girl who had once knelt on a restaurant floor, humiliated and bleeding, felt like someone from a faded, painful photograph. In many crucial ways, Natalie was still Dominic's official assistant. But now, as his wife, she worked alongside him as an equal partner, her judgment and insight valued above all others. She had finished her business degree, a diploma he'd insisted on paying for, which she earned with dedication. Her mother lived securely and happily 2 floors down in the same building. Zoe was thriving. Her chronic asthma was fully under control, and her future was blindingly bright. And Dominic, her husband, her partner, her love, had kept every single promise he had made on that desperate morning. He protected them fiercely, surrounding their life with impenetrable security, but he never caged them. He loved them unconditionally, openly. He had built a life that perfectly balanced lethal power with profound tenderness. "Mom!" Zoe called out from the kitchen, impatience in her voice. "Dad made pancakes. "Come on, Dad." Zoe had started calling him Dad 6 months after the wedding, a casual shift that Natalie had witnessed. Watching a man who routinely faced down entire crime families weep silent tears of pure happiness. She joined them in the enormous kitchen, accepting Dominic's morning kiss as naturally as breathing. "Happy?" he murmured against her lips, his gaze searching hers. Deliriously. "Good. Because I'm never letting you go. Ever. Promises, promises." He gave her that rare, unguarded smile, the one reserved only for her, the one that melted her defenses. "I keep my promises, always." As they sat down to breakfast, their small, complete family in their beautiful, impossible home, Natalie thought back to that single night in the restaurant. How one moment of utter cruelty had been the catalyst that led to everything she possessed now. She wouldn't change a thing. Not the fear, not the danger, not the agonizing pain, because it had led her directly here, to love, to safety, to home. And that, she knew, was worth everything. This story has come to an end. If it touched your heart in any way, leave your like and share it with someone who also enjoys thrilling stories. New stories are coming soon. Until next time.